Hello and welcome back to the channel. You've joined me, Dr. James Gill, for a blended clinical skills video. We're going to be looking at the Achilles tendon rupture and how we examine that injury in the clinic with the Thompson test. To start, I think it would be worthwhile to have a quick look at the Achilles tendon structure and how the Achilles tendon damage occurs. Now, personally, I think the Achilles tendon is probably my favourite tendon. Yes, I'm a doctor, I can say that. I have a favourite tendon, and it's not crazy for me to say it. But the point is, there's a lot here to learn. I think probably one of the reasons is that it's the longest and the strongest tendon in the whole human body. It allows us to be these bipedal creatures that can run and jump and, heck, walk upright. The point is that the Achilles tendon, in many ways, allows us to be human. So before we get much further into that, let's discuss that here. Let's highlight some of the anatomy so we're all on the same page. Now, with regard to the calf muscle, we've got two main calf muscles, gastrocnemius and soleus muscles. Yes, there is a third muscle in some people, the plantaris muscle, but this is actually absent in between 10 and 20% of people. Side note, I actually find the concept of vestigial muscles to be quite fascinating. In the hand, there's the vestigial palmaris longus tendon. When you put your thumb and index finger together, you can see the palmaris longus here, just on the ulnar side of FCR, flexor carpi radialis. It's interesting enough that I have only one in one wrist, but not the other. I'm not sure if that means half of me is evolved and the other half isn't, but feel free to make your own jokes in the comment. Okay, so returning to the main focus, the Achilles tendon. The Achilles is actually formed with a blending of gastrocnemius and soleus muscle, with this elastic tissue of the tendon connecting to the insertion on the calcaneus, or the heel bone. So, given that the Achilles tendon we've highlighted is both the longest and the strongest tendon in the body, the question's got to be, what can result in it being damaged? Well, I tell you what, let's give you some numbers. If you're a weekend warrior, then we're looking at an incidence of about 25 ruptures per 100,000 people per year. If you're less interested in your five-a-side game or your squash score, then your incidence dropped considerably to about 7 per 100,000. But in both cases, once you're in your 30s, you're in the danger group. For clarification, we can split Achilles ruptures into two based upon time. We've got acute ruptures, those that follow a sudden injury, essentially acute overload, and then we've got chronic tendon ruptures, which is something that occurs about 4 to 6 weeks after the original injury, which is thought to have overloaded the tendon. The way I think about chronic Achilles tendon injury is that the damage has already happened. So you've maybe got an overstress, maybe you've got lots of micro tears, but ultimately they're not able to heal fast enough for the straw that breaks the camel's back. That one day, weeks after your original innocuous level of overload, suddenly the tendon can't hold it together anymore, and bang, there it goes. So we've got the two main types of Achilles tendon rupture, the acute and the chronic. One happens bang straight away, and the other gives way over time, more of a long-term issue. But in terms of triggers, essentially it's the same for both. We're looking at overload injuries, anything that puts a huge amount of stress on the tendon. So for example, squash, those acute changes in direction. Football, certainly, basketball can do it again. It's all about anything that's got that explosive activity, really. However, there's always a however in medicine, there are also longer term factors that can put a thumb on the scale and increase your risk of an Achilles tendon rupture occurring. Now, frankly, it's kind of what you'd think, anything putting increased strain on the tendon. So two big risk factors are the natural aging process, which is why we see middle-aged individuals who are trying to keep themselves fit, exposing themselves to that active load, are more at risk. Similarly, obesity, which a group of people that might want to be associated getting fitter, are more likely to walk into an issue. Similarly, you could get into an issue just because of what you're doing in training. if you've got poor biomechanics, so you're not running efficiently or your walking isn't great, this again can increase strain on the tendon over time. Now, there is something from our perspective as doctors that we can do to increase the risk, and that's giving medications. Steroids, for example, they're a known cause of connective tissue damage, which is why we give a lot of caution when we're doing steroid injections in the knee. But there's also other specific medications like fluoroquinolones, such as ciprofloxacin, an antibiotic. Although we do appreciate that the risk of Cipro causing tendon damage isn't quite as alarming as we previously thought, it's still a risk factor and something we need to make sure we warn our patients about if they're given the course of these antibiotics. Crucially, we'd say that they shouldn't overexert themselves in the following few weeks, not days after having had this medication. So fine, we understand what an Achilles tendon rupture is now. We want to now think about how our Achilles patient is going to come in. Sorry, let me reframe that because some smart aleck is going to say they're coming in via ambulance. What I mean by that is, how will they present? So the patient is going to say that they've suddenly, crucial bit, had severe pain in the calf or ankle. And often it'll say that they felt like they've been shot or struck in the back of the leg. They might even comment that there was an association of a loud bang. In reality, it's probably that they felt the bang, but it's the kind of thing that you would assume that you've heard, not knowing that you've ruptured your tendon. Now, because of where the tendons tend to rupture, there's probably going to be swelling around the heel, because most commonly we're looking at the distal part of the tendon which tears. Then we'll observe the patient walking and we'll see if they've got an impaired gait. This is going to be particularly noticeable in the sense that there'll be an asymmetry to the gait, because on the injured leg, they're now going to have a decreased plantar flexion, which is the main action done by the Achilles tendon. So that's going to mean a reduced ability to push off their injured leg when walking. Now, when we physically assess the patient, we're going to find that they've got an inability to raise their heel off the floor. Kind of makes sense if you can't push down, if you can't plantar-flex the foot. So given the main focus of the test for an Achilles tendon rupture, the Thompson test, it's all about count what movement can we get on the foot. It kind of makes sense. So when we're assessing the patient's ankle and calf, we might find a classical step in the tendon where we can press with our thumb or our fingers and feel the tendon's literally not connected anymore. But then we're still going to do the squeezing part of the Thompson test. If we've got a rupture, we squeeze the calf, we're not going to see any plantar flexion because, well, they're not connected anymore. Now, I mentioned you might be able to feel a step or a tear in the Achilles, but that's not just an academic point. This tear or step is actually very important because it's how we're going to classify the degree of injury. Particularly so as there's one type of Achilles tear where 50% of the tendon is actually intact. We've only torn part of it. It might still present with, the same pain and possibly the tearing noise, but again, the whole thing hasn't torn. As a result, you're not going to get the same clear step, and initially you're probably going to have to rely more on the clinical history and other parts of the examination, because the Thompson test there is probably going to be negative. However, when we assess the power at the ankle or the gait, we're probably going to see a difference there, particularly a weakness to plantar flexion. It'll still be positive, as in they'll still be able to move the foot, but it'll just be weaker compared to the other one. Now, this type of tendon tear, a grade 1 Achilles rupture, is really important because it's largely going to be treated conservatively. After all, for all the other grades of tendon tears, we need to get the surgeons involved. So for the grade 1, we want to recognise it and get the physiotherapists involved as soon as we can. And hopefully that'll mean that we can get healing of the tendon, and hopefully it'll mean that it won't progress to a grade 2 later on potentially, which would again involve the surgeons. So I've mentioned type 2 there. Here we've now got a full gap, but it's under 3 centimetres in size, which hopefully will mean it can be repaired without difficulty. As we increase the level of damage, we've got a type 3 Achilles tendon tear, and that's where the gap is now growing. We've now got a 3 to 6 centimetre gap, and here we're probably going to have to crank up things a little bit more, as the surgeons are probably going to need to include a graft in the repair. Then finally we've got the type 4 defect. This has kind of got a little bit of a pejorative name to it because it's often described as a neglect rupture. And the reason for that is it's arguably more difficult to treat because the muscles involved have been ignored and they've actually contracted up. So it's no longer a case of simply pulling the two severed ends together and stitching it up, making a good anastomosis. We've now got to facilitate a much larger operation, potentially with the much larger graft, crucially than if they'd been treated earlier. As a result of this retraction, this gap is going to be greater than 6 centimetres. And, we're not talking about a small tear here. 6 centimetres of movement of a tissue is a large issue. And that's going to put more weight on the grafting because we need to make sure that the graft is strong enough to cover. And with that, the recovery is much more difficult for the patient. And realistically, the likelihood of a full return to functionalities before the injury is much less. There's no such thing as never. There are fantastic surgeons and amazing physiotherapists. But this grade 4 injury, where we're assuming an element of delay, if we're not going to use the word neglect, delay before they get seen, might mean that it's much more difficult to get back to that same level of functionality. Now, when it comes to formally assessing the Achilles tendon, whilst we might be pretty confident we know what's going on from what the patient said in their history, the testing, that's the thing that's going to confirm our diagnosis. To that end, the Thompson test is probably the most important part of our clinical examination kit here. It's a very specific and sensitive test, sufficiently so that with a positive clinical examination, you're only going to miss about 4% of patients. That's a very good test. Yes, you're still going to request future imaging, such as ultrasound, to confirm the grade of the tear, but the majority of clinical diagnosis can be made clinically. Now, that is still very, very important because if we're able to make the diagnosis quickly and accurately, then it reduces greatly the possibility of having a grade 4 rupture where part of the problem is the muscle has retracted. So being able to accurately diagnose your patient with an Achilles tendon rupture is very, very crucial. So to that end, once we've diagnosed the rupture, if we're dealing with a grade 1, we want to go for conservative treatment, so immobilise the foot initially and then send the patient to the physio. If it's worse than grade 1, as mentioned, we need to get the surgeons involved and then we're going to return the patient to the physiotherapist's couch with immobilisation as well. As I've said, the crucial thing with Achilles tendon tears is timing, hence why it's important to understand and make sure that you're confident in delivering the Thompson test because it's going to give us the answer so quickly. The longer there's a delay in starting care, the greater the probability we're not going to be able to help the patient return to full functionality. Now, what that means is going to differ from case to case. It might mean that the strength of the muscles never returns to where they were. It might mean that the repair was difficult, thus there's going to be an increased risk of repeat tendon rupture or repeat repair rupture than there would have been otherwise. Now, as I'm just a GP and not a physio, I can't speak to the specific rehabilitation options. But that said, I do still understand that the physio is going to be key in all aspects of an Achilles tendon rupture. Yes, the surgeons might put the patient back together, but that is not enough. We're still talking months of specific physio to get the patient moving again, get that patient hopefully able to do what they want. Now, it's important to highlight with that there's going to be a range of different approaches to rehabilitation, and whichever physio approach is taken, the aim, however, is always going to be the same: to help the patient return to their desired level of activity, with the understanding that we're probably looking about 6 months of care needed to do so. Now, when I say return to their desired levels of activity, we need to understand that that's not just going back 6 weeks later and carrying on with 6 months of physio care. We need to make sure that their return is gradually. That word gradually is very important. If a patient rushes back, they're going to significantly increase the risk of re-rupture, potentially at the operation anastomosis, and that's going to make further repair and rehab much more difficult the second time around. Well, I think at this point it's probably a good idea for us to get close and actually show you the Thompson test in action, given that that's going to be the main test that you're going to be doing to diagnose your Achilles tendon rupture. So in terms of doing the Thompson test, we're going to feel along the Achilles tendon to see if we can feel any steps and things like that. Then we're going to slightly plantar-flex the foot, and I'm going to squeeze at the same time. And as we can see, doing so squeezes the tendon and the foot moves. So if I squeeze here, again we get that excellent move. By having both legs at the same position, I can check for, again, steps, again slightly plantar-flexing the foot and squeezing again. So I can do squeezing, 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 squeezing. And as we can see, there's slightly less movement here on the right than there is on the left. So if we're doing the Thompson test one leg at a time, we can have the patient stabilise themselves on the floor with one leg on a bench, the weight going through that leg at 90 degrees. So I'm going to press along the Achilles tendon, seeing if I can feel any steps, which I can't. Then I'm going to slightly dorsiflex the foot and squeeze. So there we have it, the Thompson test and how to assess an Achilles tendon rupture. Hopefully this has been a useful video for yourself. If there's other areas that you'd like us to look at, please put it in the comments and we'll see if we can get around to that. If you could help me out by subscribing to the channel, it certainly shows YouTube that we're here and also gives you a notification when we've got the next one up. Take care and we'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.